I thought the Shroud of Turin had been thoroughly discredited by modern science.
Right, because all of it matches the way in which Jesus was crucified. The image is only 2 microns thick. It does not absorb all the way through. So if the claim is based on one fact, the carbon dating of 1988 that you brought up, 1260 to 1390 is what they wrote on the chalkboard in October of 1988, that the carbon dating said that the shroud is not man-made. It's otherworldly. We have pre-mortem and post-mortem blood all over the shroud. If this was a hoax, if this was a work of art, if there was pigment, if there was dye, if there was paint, it would absorb fully. But if we took a razor to the actual shroud, we could shave off the image because it's that thin.
Wow.
And this is what the best scientists in the world cannot replicate.
Today we're going to be diving deep into all things Shroud of Turin and amazing evidences for the Shroud of Turin being the burial cloth of Jesus, as Jeremiah Johnston gives amazing evidence on Tucker Carlson's podcast, guys. And let me tell you, this is absolutely mind-blowing. So make sure to watch till the end, because I have a Bible verse that will tie all of this together. And shout out to Tucker Carlson. I'll have the entire podcast in the description below. You can go watch it. Guys, this is absolutely fascinating. I'd love to know what you guys think in the comments below.
You're saying that this cloth represented right here, 1-to-1, covered Jesus's body.
The historical Jesus, and it's not a death cloth. I actually believe it's a resurrection cloth.
Resurrection cloth.
What's fascinating is this cloth is unique. We have hundreds of burial shrouds from the land of Israel. We have hundreds of them from Qumran. We have them from all over Antiquity, really. But what's unique about this burial cloth, Tucker, is that it has embedded in it the image of a crucified man that has complete correspondence with what we know of crucifixion in the Roman Empire, specifically as it relates to Jesus of Nazareth.
How do we have hundreds of burial cloths from that period?
Well, it turns out that the Jewish burial traditions were an extremely serious matter, that even Josephus says that the Romans were sensitive to Jewish burial traditions. And so we have...
Josephus is a Jewish historian.
Jewish historian of the first century, exactly. And so when these tombs have been excavated, not only are ossuaries found, which are bone boxes that have generations of family bones within them, there's also burial shrouds that have been found, both in Jerusalem and in Masada and other places around the land of Israel.
The climate being dry enough to preserve
Absolutely.
them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and one thing that you guys miss is he said that the same exact linen that they would have used during that time, woven together. And I was just saying that if any of those things were off, you could disregard how in the world would there be a crazy, miraculous picture of a man who was crucified on there. But if it was like made with some material from different Middle Age material, then you could be like, well, that's not. But it is. It literally is. And yes, they used things to patch it up from modern days. And that's where people got the terrible debunction saying, oh, it's from the Middle Age time. But they only sampled just a little fraction of a clip of the side. Examined the entire thing until recently.
Thousands of years. In fact, we have people say, well, the Shroud of Turin, it couldn't be Jesus's. You're saying it's 2,000 years old. We actually have linen garments that are much older. They antedate the shroud by 3,000 years. We have the Tarkan dress from Egypt. You can Google it, and it's a beautiful linen blouse, and it's 5,000 years old.
Wow.
So given the right circumstances, linen will last forever.
Amazing.
So it's not a shocker that we have burial cloths from antiquity. It's not a shocker that we have pure linen burial cloths. The shocker is the image that's embedded in the cloth.
Okay, I have many questions. And I'll ask.
I'm excited about
my
this.
first question last,
Okay.
which is, wait, I thought the Shroud of Turin had been thoroughly discredited by modern science.
Right.
And we'll get to that, but let me just
stay tuned.
Provide a partial spoiler by saying what is factually true, which is, no, it has not been.
Correct.
And actually, that science has been updated, as it so often is, and we know that it has not been discredited. But anyway, okay, what image is on this cloth?
This is an image of a bearded man, a strong man, a muscular man, height of 5'10" to 5'11", which is interesting because the average Jewish height in the first century was 5'7" to 5'9". So this man would have been taller. He weighs around 170 to 180 pounds. And since this is a contiguous cloth, it's not strips. We're not talking about mummification, right? The Jews didn't embalm. They had to bury the dead on the day of their death. And that's what we see consistent with all the first century or late Second Temple.
They did not embalm.
They did not embalm, and so they didn't practice mummification. This is why when you read the Gospels and women are coming to the tomb of Jesus on that what became that first Easter morning, which we know is April 5th, AD 30, or April 9, AD 33, depending on which year you go with. Women are coming to complete the spicing of the body. Why? Because the body would stink. The body's in rigor mortis. Jews would mourn the dead for 7 days inside the family tomb. They would mourn, they would spice the body. And so the women are coming there on that first Easter morning, not realizing they're going to be the first evangelists of the Christian faith because the tomb is empty and they see Jesus alive again.
Wow.
What does it mean to spice a body?
They would perfume it with myrrh, with aloes. Because of Jewish burial traditions, remember when Lazarus dies, he's been dead for 4 days. And Mary and Martha are like, Jesus, don't open the tomb. The body stinketh, according to the King James Version. That's why they would spice the body, because for 7 days you mourn the dead at the family tomb.
So you have to sit next to the corpse, and the corpse is rotting.
Yeah, I've been in hundreds of Jewish burial tombs. They're all like the shape of our hand. And so you would walk in the tomb. It's always cut out of limestone. And the tomb has different niches. So the fingers represent the niches, but you would pray, you would worship, you would mourn the dead inside essentially a gathering point within the tomb of Jewish burial traditions.
And there'll be slots cut into
these niches.
Yep.
Right. And in those niches are these bone boxes called ossuaries, because 1 year after your family member, your loved one died, you would collect the bones, and those bones would then be placed in a bone box. This is a thing called ossilegium. And that's why when you go to the land of Israel today and you see 150,000 bone boxes on the Mount of Olives, that's all Jewish burial traditions. And so this is very insightful because we see a correspondence with everything we learn about the shroud, and it bears correspondence with the first century world.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I feel like there's like 3 different burial places of Jesus where people think that Jesus was buried. There's the Holy Sepulchre. Then there's some place outside of the city gates. It's also fascinating. And yeah, the one in the Holy Sepulchre, it's kind of like what he was describing. It's such a small room, and you get inside, and then there's slots that you can just put the body in. Super fascinating. Obviously, they built a church on top of it now, and it's all crazy of its own. Very beautiful church, but it's wild.
Of the hundreds of thousands of shrouds like this that exist, why do we think this one has an image of Jesus on it?
Because all of it matches the way in which Jesus was crucified. And that's what's powerful about the shroud.
Okay. For example?
For example, on the shroud, we have blood all over it. And the blood is interesting. It's been tested. It's type AB blood, which is Semitic blood. The fewest amount of people in the world, only 6% of the world's population has type AB blood.
Wow.
And so this is human blood. It's male blood. It's not blood of an animal. It's not a hoax. You would have to actually kill someone if you were trying to reproduce the shroud, because we have pre-mortem and post-mortem blood all over the shroud. So that's interesting. So this tells us that someone died a torturous death, a death where he was flogged. We see scourges. There are hashes all over the front and back images. What we have is the front on the left, lined up perfectly here in the middle of the camera. We see the face of the crucified man. And what sticks out, you can actually see between rib 5 and 6, a gash in the side. Well, Jesus, we know from John's gospel, he is penetrated through rib 5 and 6 by a spear. And that spear, John says, blood and water comes out. Well, that's post-mortem blood. We know that blood differs from the other pre-mortem blood on the shroud. So many of these factoids are indicative that this was a man who had suffered crucifixion under the Romans. They were experts at it. And we see that all of this bears correspondence with what we read in the Gospels about how Jesus died.
How do we know that?
That's just so crazy. The fact that it has all of those markings on there that just completely describes what happened to Jesus. So you can't just say it's a fake. People will say, well, how do you know it's Jesus? You don't know for sure. I mean, The crown of thorns, they usually don't stab someone in the side. That's a big detail. That's a major thing. So you can't say it's like some art piece. You can't say that, oh, someone drew on this. No, it's impossible. No one can replicate that now with the modern technology that we have.
And pictured on the shroud was crucified.
That's a great question, because there are crucifixion nail wounds. You can actually see in the forearms of the crucified man. We see, by the way, wrist, hands, the entire hand, it's all the same Greek word. And so Jesus, we know that the nail penetrates through the wrist and the palm, and that's how the Romans would crucify their victims. In fact, we have 21 different evidences of crucifixion with nail penetrations just in the land of Israel in the first century. So this was a common way that the Romans had perfected in killing people. Type A, B.
All right, so now we're going to get into some of the evidences and testings, scientific testings that they have done for the Shroud of Turin.
And then in addition to that, when you look at the shroud and you see this and you see all of the image itself, that's left. The blood absorbs all the way through the linen, but the image is superficial. Now, this is where you have to stay with me. The image is only 2 microns thick. It does not absorb all the way through. So if this was a hoax, if this was a work of art, if there was pigment, if there was dye, if there was paint, it would absorb fully. But if we took a razor to the actual shroud, we could shave off the image because it's that thin.
Wow.
And this is what the best scientists in the world cannot replicate. That's what's fascinating about the shroud. The image, there's no paint, there's no dye, there's no ink. The image is actually something chemically has happened, and we believe it happened at the moment of resurrection. 34,000 billion watts of energy in 1/40th of a billionth of a second. A physicist, my friend Paulo De Lazo at ANEA Laboratories right outside of Rome, spent 5 years. He's a laser expert. He's a physicist who works with lasers. And they were able to duplicate the chemical change of what happens with the linen fibers, 34,000 billion watts of energy at peak power. But the thing is, it was a cold energy. It happened in 1/40th of a billionth of a second. And that is what changed the chemical structure to leave this image on the shroud. So that answers your question. How is there a photograph? Well, scientists doesn't know the mechanism. We have no way to quantify how this happens. The best scientific laboratories, when you look at it, Sandia Labs, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Los Alamos National Lab, ANEA Laboratories in Rome, the world's best scientists cannot reproduce this image that's in the shroud.
Does any other of the many burial shrouds from the region and the period, do any of them contain images?
None. We have blood on them. We have Hansen's disease, the tomb of the shroud. We actually had a
leprosy.
Yeah, exactly. That was discovered. The Bible deniers said there was no such thing as leprosy, so Jesus couldn't have healed lepers. Well, we have a shroud that actually has leprosy on it. None of the shrouds that we have this image, which you've just seen, which is, it's mysterious because the shroud is the most lied about artifact in the world, Tucker, and that's why I so appreciate you having me on.
People just want to deny it. They just say, there's no proof. That's just a hoax. Because people don't want to face the fact that they have to submit to authority if Jesus is real, if Jesus is God. Because that means he is who he said he is, and that means that impacts everyone's life, including yours. And you have to live by that. So that's why it's scary for people.
Today, it is the most hated artifact in the world. It's the most lied about artifact. It's the most misunderstood artifact in the world. I have an allergic reaction to Catholic relics. There are over 20,000 relics in the Catholic Church. And then a relic is interesting because it has this apocryphal history to it, and yet it can't be studied by the physical sciences. The Catholic Church has only 2 artifacts now that we can call both an artifact and a relic. We have the Shroud of Turin because it can be tested through history, through sciences. We're going to get to the pollen spores. I mean, this is like a CSI experiment. When you look at the shroud, it's amazing. And then we have the Sudarium of Oviedo in Spain, which is the face cloth that John's gospel talks about that covered his face, that was in the corner of the tomb when the disciples came to see that the tomb was empty that first Easter morning in John chapter 20. So, and that cloth also has human blood. Guess what the blood type is? Type AB.
AB.
You can't make this stuff up. It's mind-boggling.
So that image was not really clear
Right.
to people until 1898.
1898, the first photograph. And then in 1931, Henri, the first professional photographer, takes these high-resolution images for his day. And that sent shockwaves throughout the scientific community. So much so that you have thinkers like C.S. Lewis. I used to live in Oxford when I did my residency, and I would often go to the kilns to Lewis's home. And you can go in the bedroom of Lewis's home, where the man lived, the great thinker of the 20th century, who was an atheist, who became a Christian. And I look up, and above the mantle in his bedroom, I can see it right now in my mind's eye, he has Henri's image of the face of the crucified man. Because every morning that C.S. Lewis woke up, he wanted to be reminded our God has a face. Jesus narrates God to us. If you want to know what God's like, look at the face of Jesus. Yeah. And Lewis needed that reminder. And so if C.S. Lewis takes the Shroud of Turin seriously enough to have a picture of it above his mantle in his bedroom, where the first thing he saw every morning when he put his feet on the ground, I wanted to take it more seriously.
Amazing. And he was, of course, Anglican, not Catholic. What kind of testing has been done, scientific testing?
That is such a great question. This is where I went from being a shroud skeptic, because I was conditioned in Oxford in my residency that we deny miracles, we deny anything supernatural. Oxford is really a factory for creating apostate Bible scholars, by and large. I can say that having been there and been in faculty of theology in Keble College. I know that's not popular, but it's true. I would often go home to my flat in Summertown after reading the Greek New Testament with my cohort, and I would ask my wife, Audrey, am I the only one who actually believes in Jesus in this group? And that's okay. And I was conditioned that this is a Catholic relic. There's no historicity behind this. It's a joke. And I was conditioned by that. And then I was scary. And this is why your voice is so important, Tucker. So many people, they know enough to be dangerous. They're TikTok smart or they're YouTube smart. They have a soundbite, but they have no substance to their faith. And I want to have a substance to my faith. I'm a truth addict. I follow truth wherever it leads. And my pastor, Jack Graham, began encouraging me to just look into the primary sources for the shroud, not to pay attention to the blogosphere, but to pay attention to what do the scientists actually tell us. And once I began to look at the scientific studies that undergird all of the facts I'm sharing with you, I remember it took my breath away. The evidence was so compelling. So
before he dives into that, it's so true. You look up Shroud of Turin and there's thousands of articles, all having their own opinion. But it's just their opinion. They say this, they say that. It's all been debunked. It's all real. But look into the evidence. What is this shroud made out of? How did these marks get there? There's so many undeniable proofs and things to come about. And people try to deny it all the time. But you still can't replicate the picture. How is the picture there? One way or another, that's what is the craziest thing. Whether it's old or new or like, how is this possible? That's the thing.
Your excellent question, given that framework. 102 scientific disciplines have studied the shroud and produced peer-reviewed journals, studies, and cases for all the different aspects. And when I tell you it's the most studied artifact in the world, I mean it. 102 academic disciplines have spent 600,000 scientific hours, like my friend Paul DeLazzo, studying the lasers, like my friend Bruno Barberis, the mathematician from University of Turin, not a theologian, not a preacher, great guy, good friend of mine. Bruno is a mathematician, and he took all of the excellent questions you're asking me, the correspondence of how do we know he was crucified? How was he crucified? What blood type? Crown of thorns, nail print hands, nail scarred side, nail prints in the calcaneus, the heel, which is interesting. We'll talk about that. The scourge marks and then the patibulum abrasions, the crossbeam. When he factored all of those probabilities together, Bruno Barberis, the mathematician, said there is a 1 in 200 billion chance it's anyone other than Jesus of Nazareth. 1 in 200 billion. Wow. I like my odds.
Because the physical, the representations in this image track so precisely to with the scripture. Accounts.
Exactly. Not only with scripture, but with what we know of crucifixion from Josephus, from Philo, from all of the other first century historians.
So now I'm going to the part where Jeremiah Johnston debunks some of the claims that the Shroud of Turin is fake. I'd love to know what you guys think. Let's get into it.
That look just like the image of the face of the man of the shroud.
Yes.
So, like, what are all these people looking at if the shroud was invented, like the liberal scientists want us to believe and the liberal Bible scholars who are apostate, in the 14th century?
So that's the claim.
The claim is based on one fact, the carbon dating of 1988 that you brought up. 1260 to 1390 is what they wrote on the chalkboard in October of 1988, that the carbon dating said.
So let's get into that in some detail, if you don't mind.
I would love to.
So everybody remember, I guess I misremembered. I was told it was probably fake in 1980, but you're saying it was not till 1988.
October
88, there was a radiocarbon dating of the shroud itself.
Right.
Before you debunk it, if you wouldn't mind just explaining who did that.
Right. So the agreement was, again, the Catholic Church did not take control of the shroud until the mid-'80s. First, if you don't mind, could I just back up to 1978, Tucker, to the original scientific research? So, this is amazing, which I'm glad we have this time. In 1976, and I'll get to it, I want to set the context. 2 Air Force Academy professors, Eric Jumper and John Jackson, use a machine that was developed to study the effects of the nuclear bomb called a VP8 image analyzer. It's a brightness map. And they would use that to scan the impact of the nuclear bomb. So that's what the machine is. These are not pastors. These are not theologians. These are professors at the Air Force Academy.
Wow.
They get an image of the Shroud of Turin, likely the Henri 1930s image that C.S. Lewis had in his bedroom, and they put it through the VP8 image analyzer. And they realize there are 3D information encoded in the Shroud of Turin. No other picture does that. I want to make sure this sets in. There's 3D information. There's like a holographic topography brightness map of the man of the shroud that looks like you're looking at the surface, geography, topography of land.
There's like depth.
There is depth. There's 3D. The way they said it, analytically, there's 3D information encoded in the image of the crucified man. And when they put pictures of their grandchildren through it, it was just smeared 2D images. So no other image does this. So that VP8 image analyzer, you can go on YouTube and watch it done, is what gave rise to what's called the Shroud of Turin Research Project, the scientific STURP team, which consists of 33 scientists, 26 who went to Turin, Italy. They had 5 days. They had 120 hours to study the shroud. Keep in mind, the Savoy family allowed this, not the Catholic Church. This is controversial, but I don't believe the Catholic Church would have ever allowed the Shroud of Turin to be researched. And that's not my saying. That's Barry Schwartz, who was the documenting photographer who photographed the shroud in 1978. It was the private family, the Savoys, the House of Savoy, who allowed this research team, 33 scientists, to study the shroud for 5 days. Okay, so they took 4 years. They didn't go on Twitter, didn't exist. They didn't go on social media, didn't exist. They took 4 years to publish all of their findings. And I haven't used this word yet until this point in our interview. The STURP team, these 33 scientists, by the way, Roy Rogers says, give me 15 minutes in the scientific method and I'll prove it's a hoax. He wasn't saying that after 15 minutes of studying the shroud. They all thought they had a free trip to Italy. They were in the lobby, Barry Schwartz, one of the original STURP teams, and I met many of them. Sadly, many of them are now dead. But they're meeting over drinks in the lobby of the Italy Hotel in Turin, which is a beautiful city to visit. And they're all joking that they have a free trip to Italy to debunk this hoax. No one was saying that a few days later. So these 33 scientists publish, and they prove, this is the word I'm going to use, it's proven. The shroud is not a work of art. It is not a man-made image. They can't tell you how it's made, but they prove there's no pigment, there's no dye, there's no paint. They cannot explain how the image is there, but it is not man-made. So for the Christians out there or religiously minded people who think that like we're violating the second commandment right now looking at this, we're not violating the second commandment, Tucker, so we can be at ease.
What's the second commandment?
Is you shall not worship a graven image. A graven image is by definition a man-made object, a handmade object.
Right. It is man-made, doesn't mean you're worshiping it either. But that's mind-blowing. What in the world? They might say, oh, this was the shroud's carbon dating. It only goes back to the medieval times. But the picture itself, they don't know how it got there. That is a miracle of itself. But when they finally did updated carbon dating, it was completely different.
The shroud is not man-made. It's otherworldly. So we're not violating the second commandment. So that allows people
And what's
to breathe
otherworldly
easier.
about it? The 3D.
That the image, here's the cool part about the shroud. I believe we're looking at the moment of Jesus' resurrection, ultimately. All of this conversation leads that something powerful happens on that first Easter morning. It's electromagnetic radiation that's so powerful. We don't have this amount of watt power on Earth, 40 billion watts of energy, but it happens. It's peak power. It's not like the power when you flip on. It took me a while to learn this. It's almost like a cold energy because it happens so quickly in a twinkling of an eye.
It doesn't evaporate.
It doesn't
the linen.
squirt. That's what the labs could heat up and essentially tattoo the shroud, but it would burn up instantly. It would scorch. This didn't scorch. It was the pulse rate, which was so, and I know we're getting deep, but it's important to be nuanced in this conversation and precise. The pulse rate power, 40,000 billion watts traveling at 1/40th of a billionth of a second, we believe is that moment that Jesus' body is resurrected. And that's what leaves this image.
But whatever it was a process that
chemically changed the fibrils at a 0.2 depth, which is surface level, to leave this image.
Okay.
I can't speak. I don't know what's in their mind.
But just to be clear, the so far as you know, the shroud itself, the actual linen cloth, has never been radiocarbon dated, just the patch.
Just the upper left corner, which is a contaminated sample. So it was the patched sample, not a fine linen sample.
Yeah, so not the real thing.
Correct. And that's not just me. That's Paulo de Lazzaro. That's Bruno Barberis. I mean, there's Ray Rogers. I would encourage people to study these scientists.
Is
for
there
themselves.
any way, doesn't radiocarbon dating destroy the
Yes,
sample?
Absolutely.
Right. So, I mean,
25% of CR14 dating is thrown out anyways. So my area of specialty is paleography and codicology, how we date Bible manuscripts. And we date Bible manuscripts through paleography, not through carbon dating. We date it through handwriting styles to get a date range for roughly 100 years to date Bible manuscripts. We don't do that because, to your point excellently, it destroys the actual artifact.
Is there any other way to date it?
Yes. In fact, it's been dated. That's the thing. Again, thank you so much for asking these questions, Tucker. It has been dated in 4 other scientific ways that conclusively all show that it's a first century artifact. We have breaking news on your show. Wide-angle X-ray scattering out of the Institute of Crystallography in Rome has shown that the shroud has been getting old. It's been decomposing. It's been degenerating for 2,000 years. They took a sample of a shroud from Masada that's conclusively dated to AD 70, and they compared the Shroud of Turin using wide-angle X-ray scattering. This is the Institute of Crystallography. And what they found is that the samples have both been getting old at the same time for 2,000 years. So it's not been getting old for 700 years. It's been getting old for 2,000 years. There was another study done. Linen is made from flax, and it has a substance called vanillin in it, vanillin. And it takes hundreds, if not thousands of years for there to be no trace elements of vanillin in the fine linen. Guess how much vanillin there is in the Shroud of Turin? 0. So if it was 700 years old, there would still be traces of vanillin chemically. There's no vanillin in the shroud. So I don't want to bore you with these details, but they're very important.
They're not boring at all.
There have been other scientific studies that have been suppressed all of the other studies, to answer your question, have proven that the shroud is 2,000 years old from a scientific standpoint.
I think it's...
I just want to read this verse that I think so clearly points to the mastermind of who God is, and he's always showing us so many things to help us come to know. Romans 1:20 says, "For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky through everything God made. They can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature. So they have no excuse for not knowing God." There's so many things that point to God's creation. And if the Shroud of Turin is real, he could easily do it. If it's God's will that people see some miraculous sign to point to creation, like God could easily do it. It's not some crazy far out thing. If God can resurrect a man, he can cause some markings on the Shroud of Turin. Anyway, guys, I'd love to know what you think in the comments below. This is also fascinating. If you never decide to follow Jesus, I encourage you to do that today, guys. This is mind-blowing stuff. If this is real, I think it just points to a creator's show. Like, obviously, Jesus died on the cross. How did the painting get there? He resurrected. If he resurrected, guess what? He's God. That's why you should go to Jesus today. Because he loves you. He died on the cross for your sins so that you can be saved. In the description below, you can click a link to help you to decide to follow Jesus for the first time. It will be the best decision you could ever make. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I encourage you to hit the like button and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And I know we can do it with your help. It's all been a mind-blowing experience doing this for the glory of God. God is always with me, and I'm so thankful. Anyway, guys, love and appreciate you all. Have an amazing day.